Hello, everyone, and welcome to the English Hour. This is Hussein speaking from Istanbul. It's, I think, a cold day, and we are in the middle of March. I was sick for a while, and then I had trips around Turkey, and it was followed by certain meetings. And now I'm not feeling great again, but I thought it's time to hit the record button and share some of the developments. One of the questions I get asked frequently is, why am I doing what am I doing, right? Like, why record a podcast? Why talk about certain topics and maybe skip others? So in this episode, I'll try to share the answer to this question. And it was most recently asked by one of our listeners in Germany. And well, I guess we can dedicate this episode to him. So, why am I doing this? And while I'm going over the points, I'll be sharing my notes with you so that I don't skip anything, and it also will make things easier to follow. So, let's get started. I guess the main point is to advance the human knowledge, because as humans, we all learn and grow every day. If we make an effort, we learn something, and sometimes we learn things without really trying. Like, life teaches us a lesson, or maybe a lot of lessons in a single day or in a lifetime. So we all learn, and as social creatures, as social beings, sharing our learnings, sharing our mistakes, sharing our progress, I think helps us grow as a society and become better humans. So in that sense, I see this podcast as a medium of progress, as a tool for enhancing human knowledge. Like, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. We all have our flaws. We all have our problems, but we can all learn from each other, and I think we can all teach something to each other. So this podcast is a tool for communication. It's a tool for teaching and learning at the same time. Because when I'm recording an episode, maybe I'm teaching you something, but in the process of recording this episode, I also get the chance to think about my own thinking process, to think about my life, to think about my learning. So it helps me personally, and I hope it also helps you through the lessons that we derive from these episodes. And on top of that, I think this podcast helps us form meaningful connections. This ties back to the previous point. We're humans, we're social beings, and we crave for social connections. But we don't want superficial connections, because you can easily form superficial connections with anyone. Like, just say, hi, how are you? I mean, that's not the type of connection I personally want. I want deep connections. I want meaningful talk. I want to explore topics in detail. I want to delve into problems. So I want to have meaningful conversations and connections. And I see this podcast as a tool to that end. This podcast helps me to talk about meaningful topics, and I think it helps us to form and establish meaningful connections, because we have listeners all around the world. We have listeners in Portugal, Germany, US, Australia, Turkey, and we have listeners from very different age groups. Some of them are maybe high school students, some of them are seniors, some of them are professionals, some of them are academicians, some of them are programmers, some of them are doctors. So there are all sorts of people listening to this podcast from various countries, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to talk to such a diverse group of people. And maybe we don't see each other in real life, but we're able to establish really meaningful connections, and it's really satisfying. Like, I almost feel like we're friends, although maybe we're like thousands of miles away. And what is more surprising is the fact that you never know who will listen to an episode. Maybe the president of a country will listen to that episode. Maybe the prime minister of that country, or the I don't know, a very remarkable person will listen to that episode. You never know who will listen to a certain episode, and you never know what kind of an impact you will have on the lives of people who are listening to that episode. And you never know how many lives you touch. And there's both a surprise and satisfaction in this process. That's how I see it. So, let's go on. Well, of course, when I'm talking about the English hour, I cannot skip the education part because I'm a teacher at heart. I love teaching and I love sharing what I learn because, as I said, life is a process of continuous improvement. At least that's how I see it, because we're not perfect, but we're trying to achieve perfection, or at least from my perspective, we should try to do our best in our fields, in our personal lives, in our professional lives. So I'm trying to be better each and every day. Maybe some days I'm making more progress, some days I'm making less progress, but I'm always trying to move the needle further. So if you constantly try to improve, if you constantly try to be better at your craft, you'll be an invaluable asset to your society, to your company, and I think you will drive greater pleasure from life in general. Because if you are a sought after expert, if you are an in-demand person with the right skills in your job, you're a lot more valuable than the average person. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about the average person, but I think as humans, we all have certain skills and potential to thrive in a certain field. And I'll be happy if I can help you in discovering and enriching that potential. So that's my word. Well, let's go on. Another point related to this podcast is that it's fun and it's in a way a hobby, because I mean, this is not a paid project. For me, this is pure fun. And this was born out of curiosity, because the first time we started recording the English Hour podcast, it was just an idea. We thought, okay, let's try this. Let's see how it goes. And I think it became successful even beyond our wildest dreams. And I'm really happy about that. And it's been a fun and hobby project. And it really motivates me to see that this podcast has a positive impact on the lives of people around the world and in Turkey. And I think that gives a sense of purpose, because when you realize that what you're building, what you're producing has an impact on the lives of real people, I think you drive a greater sense of pleasure and purpose. It keeps you going because, for example, right now, I'm not feeling great because I had the flu and then I was coughing. I took some medications and so on. My voice is not exactly the most pleasant right now, but I wanted to record an episode because, I mean, after seeing comments from our listeners, after seeing questions from our listeners, I felt like there is real demand for this, and I wanted to record this episode and share it with you. So it's both a fun activity and it's a hobby. Well, and let's not forget this. As humans, we're all a little lonely. Like, we might be surrounded with people, but not always we feel a close connection with the people around us. Like, we might be surrounded with friends, we might be surrounded with our family, we might be surrounded by our colleagues, but sometimes we don't feel in sync. We don't feel in a close relationship. Maybe we feel a little lonely. It's not a permanent thing, but sometimes you don't feel in sync with your environment and you might feel a little lonely. So for me and for you, I think this podcast is a way of feeling less lonely, make friends, and help each other out. So I'm really proud of the progress we've made in that regard. And finally, of course, there is the reputation and the recognition part of the work that we do. So when I record an episode, when I publish it, when it becomes one of the top podcasts in Apple iTunes or Spotify, of course it brings a certain level of reputation and recognition. But I like to think of it as a secondary effect because, as I've said, this is more of a voluntary project, and it is definitely good to get some press coverage. It's definitely good to have a good reputation, but it also brings a lot of responsibility. Like when you're popular, you have to really pay more attention to what you're doing, what you're saying. You have to, in some cases, be a lot more careful. So it has both pros and cons. But as I said, I cannot really complain about the reputation and the recognition part. It helps, and it, as I said, also helps with forming real life connections and establish better relations with our environment. So guys and gals, this is basically it. So this is the story of the English hour, and this is the story of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I hope that helps, and I'd like to thank you for being part of this journey, because I mean, life is a journey. Life is a journey in learning. Life is a journey in self-development. Life is a journey in making mistakes. It's a journey, and we're trying to learn, and we're trying to enjoy life. We're trying to, in a way, help each other out. And as I said, thank you for being a part of this community, and thank you for being a part of the English Hour, and I'll see you in the next episode. And bye for now, and I hope we all have a better year. We all have a better future, and I think we have the capacity to make our lives better. Like, we might not have a fundamental change in our lives, but we can make our lives better even a little bit each and every day. So that's my last message for now, and thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode.